Walkabouter's Guide to Australia, or whatever we end up calling this thing.
It was handy to have Valerie in the car so she'd get out and open the gates for me. After having lunch at Berrima, we saw plenty of Mo flowers. At afternoon tea in Yes Park, we arrived at the Sunset Motel Gundagai after stopping for photos at Jaggi on Lookout. Room 22 overlooked the highway. We had dinner at the Services Club Motel. At Yarrawonga, we stopped at the reserve for lunch overlooking the Murray River. We had to pass the Raimei forest where trees to make matchsticks are specially grown. At Horseshoe Bend, we visited the historic reconstructed township whilst we were waiting for the paddle steamer Pyap to make its afternoon cruise along the Murray River. We make our way down to the wharf to prepare for our hourly cruise. We leave Horseshoe Bend behind on the paddle steamer Pyap. On the banks of the river we saw an owl, koala and cygnets and swans in the river. Back to the pioneer settlement at Horseshoe Bend. A static display of an old paddle steamer, which is also a restaurant and tourist information centre. Leaving Swan Hill, we head towards Mildura, but first we stop for lunch at a roadside picnic area alongside the Murray River, River Haven at Woodwood. We arrived at Mildura at 3:30 p.m. scene at Mildura. That's all its tennis courts. Spent a day touring around Mildura, visiting Red Cliffs. The Murray River was in flood, so we had to go the long way around to visit Lindeman's winery. This mobile factory did everything from fixing fences to shearing sheep and burning wood. Very slow moving now, and there is the water tower. The junction of the Murray and Darling rivers at Lock 10, and the Camellia water pumping equipment. We also visited Wentworth Jail, and we passed the border at 12:20 on the Silver City Highway. Results of a minor collision at Mildura as we were driving around the township. Had a special lookout erected amongst the orchards. We were able to get a good view of what was growing in the area. This is the road and train bridge at Renmark, crossing the Murray River. It's very important not to come in contact with the train whilst you're crossing. More orchards. We also put our watches back half an hour here. Another popular tourist spot is Ruston's Rose Garden. 13 acres with 5 people running the garden. They sent all over the world. A river crossing which was out of action owing to the flood. A view from the Renmark Caravan Park. And our van. The Big Orange, where we saw them squeeze fresh orange juice. And a lovely panoramic view from the lookout. The famous overland corner on the Murray River, where the drovers used to stop, was founded by John Chambers in 1859. In 1956, the flood level was just 18 inches under the guttering, which was about 7 foot high. At Berry we crossed the Murray River on a ferry. Always plenty of car ferries to cross the river. This is at Waikiri from a lookout tower. Outside of Truro we saw the purple field of Patterson's Curse. The sheep were thoroughly enjoying their favourite meal. We arrived in the Barossa Valley about 3 p.m. We booked into the Tanunda Hotel and spent the next day touring the Barossa. I took the opportunity to have a look at the local newspaper before we went and visit the wineries, the public library at Angaston, one of the lovely old buildings. The vineyards were in various stages of growth, some days, some weeks, some up to 30 years, all kept to 3 feet height for convenience of cutting. Rain varies from 13 inches to 18 inches a year, and vineyards are planted straight rows or curved to suit maximum use of water. Penfolds Winery was visited and tastings were observed. We had lunch at Hoffman's Winery, where a lovely lunch was served and tastings of wine and cheese were also observed. Most had scenes of wrecked steel containers from the 1979 cyclone. We came to the Chateau Tanunda for films, which is set on the banks of the Pard River, and viewed antique collections housed there. Our tourist coach. We travel on towards Gawler. We took some photos of figures on the barrel advertising the cellar. At Lindocq we saw the first telegraph office open in South Australia. We turned off at Sandy Creek to visit Barossa Reservoir and see the whispering walls caused by acoustics and wind. Views of Adelaide from the hills. We went on through Auburn, Clare to Spalding, where we had morning tea at 10:30 in a lovely shaded picnic area by the bridge and creek. Peterborough, the largest train terminal in Australia. 3 different rail gauges intermix here to go to the various destinations. Orroroo, where we stopped at 1:15 for lunch. We had a look at the scenic park. Past the Flinders Ranges. And on to Hawker. We had a walk through the pound towards the Sliding Rock Trail, but after 45 minutes we only went as far as the old homestead. We came back to Wilpena for lunch and a general tour of the motel and camping area.
Walkabouter's Guide to Australia, or whatever we end up calling this thing.
Wasn't ideal weather for bushwalking.